Hey, it's Jay here from rightsprite.co.uk, and Anbernic are of course hitting us again with another release of a handheld, this time something a little bit different and very much smaller to what their previous releases have been, the RG Nano. Nano! If you guys can remember that series, kudos. Now, micro handhelds have been out for quite a long time, and the more recent from a well-branded company probably would have been the Sega Game Gear Micro. Nintendo were at it back in the day, and Chinese rip-off ones have always been coming out. But here we have their built quality insurance by Anbernic, so looking very much forward to getting my hands on this. Well, my hand, as it's so small. Later on in this video I will go through its practicality, figure out if this is just more of a nice novelty or something of a more of essential handheld for a retro gamer on the go. Well, I have to say it's nice that they changed up their box design, well, just slightly, so let's see what we got all together in the box. This is the micro C to audio jack adapter, so you can look really cool again walking around with an MP3 player. This is a USB-C cable for charging and data transferring, as well as a handy keychain. Very useful for attaching it to stuff on the go. Actually, it's pretty nice built to my surprise. And now for the handheld itself. Well, my first impressions is yes, this is pretty impractical as it's pretty small, but it does have a really nice build quality and a weight and feel that is matching to the other higher premium builds that they have released in the past. I am very impressed. It could be the highest build quality micro handheld out there. At the bottom we do have that speaker grill with that keychain holder on the left hand side, and at back we do have that ridge design much like the original Game Boy. And then on the right hand side we do have that SD card slot. Oh well, I'll just count that as a durability test, and it passed with flying colours. We have the very clicky sounding trigger buttons on the top, the USB-C port on the top as well. I do like when plugging the USB, you do have a light ring around the connection. I think they should play this on their later devices. And it did take a while to get used to this in my hands. The standard release of this handheld is at a 64GB storage model, which is pretty overkill. Well, in just my opinion, 16GB would have just been fine for what my intentions are with this handheld anyway. My first worry of the design of this handheld is the spacing between the D-pad shell and the D-pad itself. It's quite questionable really, as the spacing can cause slight wiggle with the D-pad. But other than that, I'm very impressed. It is pretty small with a solid build. Feels pretty awesome in the hand. So now let's do a quick size comparison so you guys get a better understanding, and later soon in this video I'll go through the specs, see what we can push out of this tiny device and what to expect for its future. First up is the RG35XX, one of my personal favourite from Anbernic, and next to the OG Game Boy Pocket. Next up is another great one with one of my more preferred layouts is the RG353P. Then next to a popular RP2. But something that is more relatable to this device in size and shape, very close to be the same, is the Dreamcast VMU. Such an awesome memory card. VMU is slightly ever so taller and just a little bit wider. A quick look at the specs, not exactly expecting big numbers here, but we do have a 1.2 GHz processor with 64MB of DDR2 RAM, so not the fastest RAM and not really that big at all, but I'm sure this will be able to push enough to get up to PS1 emulation. The battery is at 1050 mAh, so expecting up to about 2 hours maximum of gameplay. The storage you can use up to 512GB if you ever need something like that. The screen is a 240 by 240 resolution, but a very clear and crisp IPS screen. The built material is using an aluminium alloy. We got no Bluetooth or even Wi-Fi on this handheld, but I didn't really expect that, but Bluetooth would have been pretty handy if you wanted to use this as a dedicated MP3 player. This is also available in two other colours, one being red and the other being purple, but quite questionable red and purple colours, as you can see with the picture. Anbernic also provide a dedicated leather protective carrying case, which does look really smart. Upon booting this up, just taking a few seconds, you are greeted with this novelty clock. It is using a custom Linux OS that has also been featured on previous micro handhelds. This one is pretty mature already, with a lot of settings and customizations which I love to see. Well, with my eyes all squinched up. Apologies for the screen focus, I did find this a bit of a pain to get a clear picture. Well, already we do have a nice clock adjustment settings and also a file management app, which is just ridiculously small, so I don't recommend using this. We also then have a button testing app to make sure that all the inputs are working correctly. That wasn't a lorry parking up, seems to just be some noise indication. Pretty weird. We got some themes and some background images to select from, which is nice. And we also have a music player app, but I found this pretty much of a pain as it's still mostly in Chinese and it's not very clear to use. Oh wait, I got a track. Sounded like a right banger of a chai pop track that I could see playing around in a shopping mall back in the 80s. But now let's hit up and test out the emulation performance. This first front end that you see can just about fit the game title text, but soon I will show you an alternative front end that is already built in. Now when it comes to Game Boy, of course this will be able to play it. When it comes to Game Boy emulation, that did originally have a very small resolution of 160 by 144 pixels. So this screen can just about get away with playing Game Boy on the go. By pressing the power button, this will bring up an in-game menu where you can save, load your game, and also exit the title. But you can change the screen ratio. Selecting full screen, you can get away with running Game Boy games because this does not distort the image by much, but I'm sure this won't be the case for other consoles and systems. The screen viewing angles are top whack here, and a great balance of colours. Before I was on about the console and handhelds that have an ideal resolution to play on this handheld. For instance, with Mega Drive being 320 by 224 resolution full screen, it will stretch it vertically a little too much, causing a bit of distortion. When you apply the settings to fit the screen, this is where it makes it even smaller and harder to see. You can select the crop mode, where then crop the image to fill the screen, but then it'll take out the sides of the visible image. I find when it comes to the NES console, the sprites are just far too small and just hard to concentrate on playing any games on this. But one system that would make sense to play on this device would be Pokemon minigames, which have around about the same resolution as a Dreamcast VMU. But for some reason this built-in emulator has no full screen settings, making it next to impossible to use. When it comes to PlayStation 1, well, I have to say this does spin me out playing this console on such a tiny device. If this did come out when I was a kid, I just would not have understood what was going on and some serious magic was happening. Again, the crop mode makes sense just to see what is going on with the gameplay, but don't expect full compatibility with PS1 titles on this device, as harder to run games like Tekken 3 is just next to unplayable. I did set myself a challenge to see if I can pull off any Hadoukens or Shurikens. Took me a while, but then I was firing fireballs like no tomorrow. But Hadoukens was ridiculously hard to pull off on this tiny handheld. But I did finally manage to get there. I wish I just didn't bother really, because I just ended up getting some serious hand cramp. But I still have to mention I was still very impressed with this PlayStation 1 capabilities. I did mention earlier that it does have a second front end that you can use from its default G menu to X, called Retro FE on this menu anyway. You can access this via the power button and scrolling down. Now this front end makes more sense, as it does have bigger icons, making it easier just to get around. You may recognize this front end as this is a version of Emulation Station, just applied to this handheld. You do have a bunch of tasty themes already that you can select from, and gamer art applied. Again, like all these other handhelds that I've reviewed in the past, and I do recommend adding your own ROM set, as a lot of these ROMs are of course named incorrectly with incorrect art. When it came to testing out this headphone port that I mentioned earlier on in the video that they included, I was pretty let down. Well, let me quickly explain here. I used my backup wired gaming headset that have no issues at all. I connected the jack to this adapter that fit in nicely and firmly, and the adapter in the top of this handheld fits in nice and tight. But I tested out a random Game Boy game and the sound just came out terrible on these headphones. Here is an example. Again, I tested another title on the Game Boy Color this time and it came out even worse. And just to confirm to you, this is not how the game is being emulated. Here is how the sound is coming out without the headphones. But though I didn't need an excuse to really hear that awesome chai pop track again, I gave that a testing and that came out completely fine. Anyway, I just thought to share a note on that. Well, next up, what I like to quickly do as well is have a quick look inside and see what the build quality is. And of course, we are built with the quality of Anbernic. And the battery here, as it states, is 1050 milliamps. But it'd be quite interesting to see what the modding community can do, because I could see a potential upgrade. And the speaker that is built in resembles much like what you've noticed from my previous videos of the Miyoo Mini and the Miyoo Mini Plus. I don't really have that much knowledge when it comes to chipboards, but I wonder if we could fit in a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth module. I wonder what this 2319 is all about. Anyway, I have managed to get this all set up more to my liking, with Game Boy and Game Boy Color, with the better ROM set and scraped art, all applied. If you'd like to know how to do this yourself, simply hit me in the comment section below and I'm happy to do a guide video. Some last thoughts and recommendations for Anbernic by releasing this handheld is whenever you are releasing a micro handheld is try and get that screen to have a less of a border to really make most of the space. And you will find that most of these micro handhelds that are released in the past do have just one button or two buttons, so then you got that room to play with. By having these 4 buttons on the front facing of this handheld, it does seem a lot cramped. By having a screen that is designed in such a ratio and resolution, some dedicated games with this release would have been pretty cool. Also, a better recommended systems to emulate, much more like the Pokemon Mini, with better settings would have been nice to reutilize the screen space, a Nintendo Classic Mini emulator, or even a Tamagotchi and a Dreamcast VMU emulator would have been pretty nice. But I am looking forward to what the modern community will do for this handheld that will make it so much more than just a standard but high quality built gaming novelty piece. And of course, one big factor is its release price. So this is fetching out just over £10 more than the RG35XX that recently came out as well. And you do get more for your money with that handheld, and it just seems more of a practical handheld at a better price. So as always guys, thanks for watching this video, and if you'd like to hit that button, if you want support, click subscribe. Love to hear your comments in the comment section below, and I catch you lot on the next video.
Nano!